Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're joining us from around the world. Welcome to Web3 Warriors, episode 46, featuring Marco Santini, very cool artist and muralist who has a cool phygital project on MakersPlace called Signature Series. And we are looking forward to talking to him. Good morning, Marco. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Good morning to you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the thought process behind your project. And a really cool story is that we actually met in Miami at the Scope Art Show on the nice Miami beach there. So a very interesting opportunity to be able to speak with somebody that I actually met in real life and got to see their artwork up close. This doesn't happen too often as far as meeting at an art show and actually having the opportunity. Thanks again.
Of course. No, I love meeting in IRL. And I think, there's something about you when we were talking and I knew you kind of knew the lingo and you just really had something, interesting angle and take on the pieces. So I'm just glad we got to connect and we kept in touch.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. So exciting. So for today's episode, of course, we will be looking at the topic of phygital NFT projects more broadly, but we are also celebrating our 1-year anniversary on January 11th. Will be officially 1 year for the Web3 Warriors show, and we're hitting season 3, and each season has 22 episodes. It has been a very rewarding experience. In year 1, we really spent a lot of time, building out the concept and supporting the community by purchasing art and building an NFT collection of amazing art from different blockchains, from Ethereum, of course, but also Tezos and Solana, and really supporting artists that are out there putting limited edition art on the blockchain and building a really impressive collection of new artists who are really making a name for themselves and venturing onto the blockchain. Well, a lot of them are new artists, but some are established artists that are just jumping onto the blockchain for the first time and finding success in NFTs. So it's very inspiring, and it's a big part of why we have the Web3 Warriors show and what we're trying to do with our community. Now we're looking to create more micro content with a lot of the awesome pieces that we've got from the creators that we've spoken to, and of course put that on the blockchain for the immutable future and build something really interesting and different on the blockchain for the community, and finding the right support and continuing to branch out within the community to talk to amazing, inspiring creators and artists like Marco here, and others who have joined us as well, and really even thought leaders who are taking the initiative to push the blockchain forward on a social level or on a grassroots level or even at a legislative level. So we really are open to those kind of conversations as well. And if you are interested in joining the Web3 Warriors podcast, you can contact us at web3warriors@gmail.com. And we're always interested in creative builders and artists, as well as thought leaders in this blockchain Web3 space. I also want to thank all of our listeners, of course, over the first year. We could not have done it without you. And especially to our live listeners who like to tune in and ask questions during the podcast. We always like to see that as well. And you're always welcome to join us at 12 p.m. Eastern every Saturday on Twitch at twitch.tv/Web3Warriors. And that's why we do the live stream as well. Part of it is to reach out to, the gamer community on Twitch and show them that this digital world is becoming a lot more real and a lot more valuable. I believe strongly that gamers and developers who understand the technology and see the value in the 3D, in the metaverse, should be taking advantage of the blockchain, of this new digital economy that has full ownership. And they have the best mindset to actually understand what's happening in Web3. But at the same time, it's also so that we can engage with the community and have an open dialogue, open platform for questions during the podcast. So
I'm curious why you chose 22 as your season number, as your episode number.
Do you approve of the numerology? Yeah, I don't know. I just kind of like the partition. It just splits up well. And 44 is one of my favorite numbers. So I just thought 22 was a good time to cut off a season. So it just kind of worked out that way. But yeah.
Nice. The Signature Series has 22 pieces, and that's why I thought it was
there you go.
Interesting connection there.
Nice. Why did you choose 22 pieces, Brad?
I chose 22 because I was launching the project in 2022, and I needed somewhere to kind of cut the line because I was just collecting and making these and going wild with this project, and I have I needed something. I'm big into numerology as well, and 11 is actually my lucky number, so it was double that. Interesting that it's half of yours and double mine. But I felt like it was just kind of fitting to have 22 pieces launching in 2022.
Interesting. Yeah, I think 2022 probably factored into my decision as well. Maybe even subconsciously, but definitely. Awesome. So looking at the topic of phygital art, it is a topic that has come up on the show a few times, but usually when we're talking to artists who have incorporated a physical art piece, it is a kind of physical version of the art that they sold on the blockchain or, that they minted, but usually not too different, if different at all. So in your case, you've kind of taken the physical piece first and really let yourself be inspired by what the artist was talking about, what they were doing at the time, and trying to incorporate that energy into your own artwork. This concept of not only having physical art, but actually tracking down physical memorabilia that belong to these actual famous artists and were signed by these famous artists. You're taking this memorabilia and giving it new life and really creating something special out of something that otherwise may have just been gathering dust on the shelf. So it's really cool.
No, I think that's a great introduction.
When I saw it in person in Miami, it was just such a fascinating concept to me. Well, maybe before you get into your actual project, which is very impressive, maybe can you share a little bit of how you got into Web3, what brought you to the blockchain, and what made you think of creating art and timeless art in this way on the blockchain?
So my name is Marco Santini, based in New York City as an artist for the last 15 years. Just moved out because I had a son, but was basically stationed there where I found my life's purpose to spread love and positivity through art and education. I was tutoring and mentoring students for a while and really kind of brought this language basis to art. I studied linguistic anthropology at Brown University and was just fascinated by communication and how we interact with people on so many different levels and so many different mediums. And so my art journey really began in New York City when, I've always considered myself an artist, but I didn't really know it could be a profession. I created this One Love logo one night with the word love in many different languages, and it was meant to kind of symbolize that there's more that unites us than divides us. I'll have Turkish and Armenian next to each other. I put Arabic next to Hebrew, which is next to German. I've been putting Russian and Ukrainian next to each other. So it's this idea that despite our differences, we still have this word that we all share, and how that can kind of be a vote of confidence for the future. And so back in 2018, I did a legal street art campaign in New York City where I put up wheat paste posters and stickers of this design. And people really gravitated to it. Within a few weeks, I was being asked to create at schools and Fortune 500 companies and charities and weddings and bar mitzvahs, you name it. It really kind of exploded in terms of this interest level. And so, I kind of really dug deep into that and brought that to different schools and charities and really started, creating a lot more murals in the world. And then, I was always dabbling with digital art. I basically taught myself the entire Adobe suite from Photoshop to Illustrator to Media Encoder to After Effects, and was really just had these ideas that I couldn't always express through just painting and murals. And so I wanted to teach myself. And as I got into that, I kind of pushed the boundary into fashion and digital design and logo design, where I was able to sell kind of lower price point t-shirts and fashion accessories and different things. But my Web3 obsession, I would say, really began right around start of COVID, so early 2020, as I guess the world started hearing about people, and as it became a little bit more mainstream. Myself coming in as a more physical, real world artist, I wanted to make the jump because I feel that there's a really beautiful value in understanding the provenance and where things come from and who has it. I look at NFTs basically as digital signatures. So to know who has it and where it is, I think is really beautiful. And so I started playing around, and I was out of a very different trajectory into the world because I basically was using my real world clients as my first NFT buyers, and not even using, but basically partnering. So I'd say that if I was asked for a commission, if they wanted a custom One Love painting, the price for this at your sizing and everything would be X, but for X plus, I would create the NFT attached to it. So I've always come with it from a physical first, creating the NFT from it second. And I found some really great success. I did really, really well before I even started a Twitter page, which was just like a few weeks ago. But then specifically with the Signature Series, it started for me during COVID as basically an educational process. I wanted to learn from the greatest artists of all time, and museums were shut down, galleries were shut down. You couldn't be physically in the presence of these artists, and I wanted to kind of learn from the best. I'm like, if I want to be one of the best, I have to learn from the best. So I did this deep dive, and I started reading all these biographies and watching all these documentaries, and I still wanted to be in their presence. And I had done this really great. I designed a lobby for a big law firm, and I did some really big projects right before COVID that allowed me the opportunity to collect these really high-end, signed, really rare, really valuable art books. And it just started as me wanting to be in the presence of these artists. But as I read through them and as I learned from them, I really kind of picked out a few specific things that really bonded all of them. We're talking about Basquiat, Haring, Picasso, de Kooning, Kahlo, O'Keeffe, you name it. But they all shared really three things in common. So the first thing they shared in common was really they had these kind of art groups that they were friendly with, ran ideas off of, / stole ideas from. And I felt like that was this idea of creative collaboration. And then the second thing that really jumped off that was that they all saw the world in a new way. They all had this new idea, this new medium, this new method for creating that was able to translate their vision into reality. And then the third thing that I'm only really realizing now as I'm bringing my project to life is that they all were met for the most part with some pretty severe criticism. And when you change something, you do something as one of the pioneer, you're often met with a lot of criticism, a lot of pushback. People don't always see where you could be going if you're thinking ahead or thinking in the future. And so that really bonded all of them. And all those ideas came together where I had been creating these kind of multi-layered collage pieces for magazines and books for celebrities and clients, where if they were published in the magazine, rather than just cut up their magazine and show their article and the cover, I would actually keep the binding of the magazine intact and use every single page to create an art piece of this, focusing on the article, showcasing the the title of the magazine, but really showing in context what was happening when you got your press piece. And so that was something that was a little bit unique, and people had said they'd never seen anything like it before. And so with these books, I decided, let me try my hand at creating this something new. And so I basically did something very, I would argue, something really fresh and new, but some people would say, blasphemous and a little bit, going against the grain in terms of taking these really rare signed books and cutting them up, repurposing them, and creating new artworks from them. And specifically getting back to your question, this is all kind of the brief history of where I started. But when I created these pieces, I felt that there was a beautiful connection between, connecting past, present, and future. So here are these great artists of all time, these icons who have created these really beautiful methods of creation that we still talk about today. And here I am in the present, in this cross-generational collaboration. They've all passed away, but I'm taking their works, all these signed books by them, repurposing them, creating new artworks of it. And I felt there was an opportunity to create digital designs from these physical pieces that could then bring them eternally into, the metaverse, creating digital NFTs with them. And so I tried to figure out what would they be creating if they were alive today in a digital sense. And so each NFT tries to imagine what would it be like if Keith Haring was alive, with the beating heart or certain things moving, or what would it be like for Matisse, one of the pieces that sold, one of the most meaningful pieces of the collection, though, because at the end of his career, he was looking into paper cutouts. He was bedridden. He couldn't be painting anymore. And he said, I'm still going to be creating. And so he cut out these pieces of paper, and people thought he was crazy and ridiculous. And he's like, this is not art. And he said, no, this is what I'm doing. And it became so big and so unique. And he really pushed through that initial resistance to become so powerful in this field of collage. The Pope acquired some of his works. It became a huge, new avenue for him. So for me, getting into the digital NFT world was really about not only bringing about ideas I had in my head that I couldn't translate into, three-dimensional artworks, but also trying to push myself to try to figure out what these great artists will be creating and how I can kind of open up my creative channels, because I feel that any artist, wants to have as many weapons as in his arsenal or her arsenal as possible to really kind of be able to communicate in whatever way possible.
Wow, that's amazing. So would you say that Henri Matisse was kind of the inspiration behind your overall project with the whole?
I think it's a lot easier to connect the dots looking back rather than looking forward. But yeah, as I was creating the Signature series, he wasn't one of the first people I did. He wasn't I was very familiar with his work and I'd really known his story. But as I got to his book, one of the initial few, and I saw his journey and saw his, the resistance that he faced, it really pushed me ahead to realize, okay, this is going to be a series. This is going to be something where people might say, I can't believe you're cutting up this super rare, super valuable book, and it's a collectible, and there's only so few of them in the world, and and whatnot. And I'm saying, I believe these books are gathering dust on the bookshelves around the world, not being appreciated for what they are. And I believe that in creating this new art category, that's what two people at Christie's said, even though they won't go on record saying it, unfortunately. But in creating this new art category, I'm creating a visual storytelling mechanism, bringing these books back to life in a new way. And you get to see it as it was when the artist signed it, and how it's been transformed with my signature and the way that I've interpreted their story as objectively as possible.
Wow, that's fascinating, and it seems like a new art category to me. It's definitely goes out of left field, and the way that you were able to get such impactful kind of memorabilia from these very, very influential artists. Can you tell us a little bit about the actual legwork that you had to do there, like tracking them down, and then how hard was it for you to kind of deface them in this way, even though it was done creatively and with love? But
Yes, absolutely done with creativity and love. I say in the traditional art world, it's a lot easier. You get your paint, you put it on the canvas, you finish the piece. Or you're painting a mural, you collect your spray paints, you have your design, you paint it, it's done. With this, it's really important to emphasize the incredibly robust kind of time frame and working session I had to go from sourcing these incredibly rare books from the highest end booksellers, from really reputable places, making sure everything is legit, to then reading the books cover to cover and trying to understand who the artist was, trying to really kind of sit with them, obviously at different times, but literally trying to sit where they were sitting when they signed this, to kind of let them, physically and mentally influence who I am, to then not only reading the book, but studying it. So with collage, you're taking pieces, you're cutting them up, you're moving them around, and you kind of repurpose them. I am not doing that. I'm keeping a majority of what you see in these creations is exactly where it was in the book when the artist signed it. So I'm studying it like with X-ray vision, trying to figure out, okay, top left corner, middle, top right, bottom right. Like, I'm trying to figure out all the different locations of where these pieces will appear in the book, and then trying to keep it as honest as possible to what it was when the artist saw it. And so it's, the cutting process, once you make that first cut, you can't go back, kind of thing. So the sourcing takes forever, and really, I did a lot of this during COVID, and I went to a few places in person, but you had to rely on, internet. And luckily there were some really beautiful, bookstores and high-end retailers, and even some museums that I worked with that were really great in terms of getting these. But from the sourcing to the reading to the planning stage, that is where a majority of the time for me happens before the first cut is even made. And so the actual first cut and physical, cutting up and creating of the new artwork, if you looked at it in kind of segments, takes probably the least amount of time. Still takes, it can take up to a few weeks to really get it right. But that process, pales in comparison to the prep of it. And so to me, I feel like that really kind of talks about the patience and the kind of journey that you have to go through to understand who the artist is, what made them really unique, and kind of trying to showcase them. I'm trying to act like a mirror. I'm not trying to put my own spin on it. I'm not doing it offensively or ripping up their face or, marking over, painting over certain things. I'm trying to do very much with respect in my heart, trying to give them a new voice in this new field. I'm calling it Illuminism, by the way. So with illuminated religious texts in previous history, really beautiful, intricate designed edges of mostly religious text, but it was beautiful not only to read, but to look at. And so I'm calling it Illuminism because I feel that I'm illuminating or shining a light on these artists, trying to tell their story and appreciate all the layers of who they are, with a kind of a new visual setup, like I said, in a very respectful and very loving way.
no doubt. Illuminism, hey, that's gonna be an interesting one. That might catch on.
I think so.
Oh, very cool, very cool. So was there like a lot of cost related to kind of tracking these down and sourcing them? And I guess that would kind of impact your pricing because they don't come cheap, right? You're looking at around 30 Ethereum or Yeah. So how is the cost on the front end, and then I guess how you came
Yeah,
up
I
with your
mean,
pricing
for
structure?
me, the other big aspect of this project was it was that I was really investing in myself. So these books were very, very expensive, each to collect. I mean, some of them are so rare. There's only a few of each one in the world, if that. Some of them have drawings and dates by some of the artists. So it was a very expensive project to get into and to have with me, but I believe in it so much, and I feel that in creating this new art category, in bringing about this new visual storytelling system for books, I really feel that I can not only create a new way of interpreting these ideas, but a new way of really bringing the importance of books back to the masses and physical understanding of the beauty that can really come from that. For these high-end collectors who sometimes push back on me and calling it blasphemy, or I can't believe you're doing this. I look at them and I'm like, I can't believe you have this really rare, important, valuable book, and you keep it on a bookshelf for 364 days out of the year, and you maybe look at it once, if that. And so I just feel there's an opportunity to give this new life, to breathe into it an appreciation. And so I had to believe in myself that much to spend this money, these high end books. But as you said, it's reflected in the price. So, you get the high end rare artwork. It is attached to a one-of-one animated NFT. And then I would argue the coolest part about it is that the buyer gets to choose a school anywhere in the world where I will go and talk to the students about the importance of art, especially in the Web3 world. And then I also then paint a mural with the students. So I go in, I basically create a paint by numbers background on a wall for the students. I teach the students how to use spray paint, which they usually love. And then after we've finished painting the background, I ask the students, what's important to you? What inspires you? And I collect all those words, and then I paint those words into the mural. And so it immediately raises the energy and the vibration of the space. It makes the kids feel seen and heard. They feel part of their community. It's really a beautiful experience where you can't even tell kind of the positive benefits that will, the long-lasting benefits that will happen. I just did the first one in Puerto Rico, which was amazing. In Carolina, we got on the front page of the El Nuevo Dia, the local newspaper there. I'm gonna be painting the second one in New York City next week. And to me, this is what I was kind of doing before the Signature Series and creating murals and talking and speaking at schools. It was really important to have that communal give back. So every time you're looking at a piece, and you're appreciating in your living room or your office, you can know not only am I enjoying this, but the fruits of this have been benefited by the kids in the local community anywhere around the world where I pick.
Wow, that's amazing. I hadn't realized that you had that whole social angle to it as well. And how did you come up with that? And how important do you think that is to the broader Web3 space? It's really amazing. It's really cool.
Thank you. I did get a little bit of pushback from traditional Web3 advisors. Initially, they're like, "Oh, that's unrelated. It doesn't really have to do with the art." And it's, usually it's, you have a T-shirt, you have a group, or you get to come to a party. And to me, coming from the physical, more physical art world, and trying to now assimilate, but also trying to stay true to myself, I believe that showing kids the importance of art and creativity from a young age is a priceless act. And to me, it's really part of the kind of the best part of my job is going into these schools, talk to the students, explain the importance of creativity. A lot of these kids don't know, either love art but don't know they love art, or haven't picked up a pen or pencil or paintbrush in a long time. And just, I feel like giving them that opportunity is a beautiful form of self-expression, and allows them to just be who they are. And I feel like that's a really great message that I want to contribute. And so, some people find it, somewhat more impactful than the art itself. Some people find it unrelated, but to me, I've made them related because it's important to me and it's important for our future. So I very much look forward to painting all around the world and finding, buyers who send me out to the middle of nowhere here or there, or this country. And so
Nice.
to me, it's a win when the kids get to see it.
I think we got to find a buyer to send you up here to Winnipeg. There's some good
Oh, I would love that.
North End cities who could use that kind of education. And I like your point about, bringing what's old and making it new in your own kind of way. And then when you take that education and bring that to the kids, I mean, that's priceless, right? So you're not only telling them about this awesome new technology called NFTs and Web3 and what you're building, but you're also educating them about some classic artists that, deserve all of the notoriety in the world, but a lot of the younger generation maybe aren't as aware of them, right? So there's that
Exactly. And
added
a lot of these kids
education.
don't. A lot of these kids don't know about Web3 and NFTs and digital art. And I'm not by any means pushing it, but I'm just saying it is out there. It's a way of expressing yourself. And even just, going around and messing around with Photoshop or Illustrator or Procreate and being able to find, an easier way to kind of explore, your creative side, I feel like is a beautiful benefit for anyone. And so to me, it is related.
Most definitely. Like I think I mentioned to you before our call, like I've been doing a lot of kind of onboarding discussions and community discussions prior to Web3 Warriors, and still during. I work with a DAO called the Dream Conduit. That's really actual 501c3 nonprofit that is helping people onboard into blockchain and Web3, and especially
Nice.
creatives, right? So that's a big part of what we're doing here. Is really from an educational standpoint, more so than maybe even entertainment. And kind of showing the potential of what's possible. And when you speak to kids, I think they are quicker to kind of understand it and see the value in the digital space. So yeah, I think it's completely related, and that's really cool. I hadn't actually realized that side of your project, so it adds even more value, I would say, on the social front. So
Thank you. And even to your point, I would say, coming in from as a physical artist, I've been amazed by how well the NFT world has done in the last few years, despite how difficult it is for the average person to understand wallets and crypto and signing up and like all the hoops. So to me, I come in as a big optimist, thinking like once this becomes even simpler and even easier for your grandma to use, there's going to be that many more people coming in. There's going to be that much more demand. And I feel just really, even though I feel in some regards late to the game. I mean, I only sold my first NFTs in 2021, but I feel that understanding it and being part of it is truly revolutionary. And I think once more people get in, they'll see how it can be beneficial in both the physical and digital worlds.
no doubt. Well, selling your first NFTs in 2021 is, I think, claim to fame in this from my side of the community that I've seen. The class of 2021 is makes up a bulk of the current NFT collectors. I think those who haven't fallen off by the wayside for the bear market.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, and you probably don't want to answer this, but looking at all these amazing, famous artists that you were able to collect memorabilia from, right? Salvador Dali, Henri Matisse, you got Basquiat on here, Jean Michel, Frida Kahlo. Do you have a favorite, or maybe even if it's not a favorite in this final form, but a favorite kind of story attached to any one of these? You must have some pretty epic stories tracking down.
They're all different favorites for different reasons. I mean, I think my first favorite was probably the Matisse, just because I was able to kind of transcend and try to really get into his mind. And I feel like, being able to interpret his work in a way that he might have been doing if he was alive today, or really kind of taking his paper cutting to the next level, I think is really, really special from just like a cross-generational collaboration. But there are little stories from everyone that I find fascinating. I mean, not as many people know about. Probably the first artist I heard about on this list ever, and is not as well recognized, Al Hirschfeld, who hit Nina in all of his designs when he was doing his caricatures, and eventually the world. But I was creating this during COVID in my New York City art studio, and when Broadway was shut down for the longest time in history, and to give honor to him and his method during that time was really, really special. I mean, the Dali piece was really exciting because I looked at that one, and a lot of the signatures are kind of like on a corner or small part of the page, and Dali, bold, boisterous, and beautiful, right, is a huge signature on the entire page of this oversized book from 1957. I was like, that's just so typical of Dali to have like a huge, bold, big, full page spread signature. Like that's who he thought he was. He said he deserves to live forever because he has so much to give to the world, and just like his crazy randomness. It was also really special to work with the Keith Haring piece. He was a really big influence of mine early in my career. I was really amazed with his ability to communicate really large concepts in very simple ways, through the people, through the heart, through the baby, through the dog. And when I internalized his ideas and when I created my One Love mural and One Love design, was instead of taking simple concepts that everyone could understand, I wanted to take languages from everywhere and put it into one single idea that people could understand. So that was where it kind of almost reverse engineering his concept. The Chuck Close NFT, I don't think got as much love as I thought, but it was probably one of my favorites because, with him, he had a facial disorder, a recognizing disorder, so he couldn't see people and see their face and understand who they were. And yet he painted faces for his entire career, and it really helped him in understanding who people were. And so when I created that NFT, I take the original photo of the book that I have, but then I have the NFT go in and out of clarity. So it's almost like, I mean, I can't really imagine what it was like for him to look at someone's face and not see it, but what it would look like if you're looking at the face and it kind of goes in and out of focus. And so that was really, really fun. Like I said, it was an educational process where I started to, figure out who these artists were. And as I went on their journeys with them, I kind of took up these little interesting tidbits and little pieces of information. And, even one thing that was kind of common, and we see a lot with artists, a lot of people, their parents didn't want them to be artists and they did it anyway. But for someone like Matisse, like he was a lawyer originally, and then his mom was like, you have something here, you should focus on it. And another thing, like Matisse actually went into debt to support and buy artwork from his other friends. And so I just find that to be incredibly admirable, and like, voting for your friends and voting for yourself in a creative way. I see that with us as we invest in other projects and support our friends and families. But to answer your question, it's like almost impossible to pick a favorite, because each one, sat with me for months on end as I was going through and reading and becoming one with this artist, so that they all have individual favorite moments for me. I mean, even just sitting in front of a Picasso book was quite wild, because I always thought he was like the most famous artist of all time. And sitting in front of him with his own doodle and drawing, I was just like, this is a piece of history. I'm like, and I'm going to alter it, and I believe make it, improve it in some ways, and make it appreciable, make it able to be appreciated in a visual sense all the time. And so, and then one other thing I'll say is the first piece I cut was the Liechtenstein piece. That he's always been, talk about somebody who really pushed against the grain. People were saying, oh, it's just comic book and these Ben-Day dots. It's, it's not real art. And yet he's become one of the most probably memorable icons of this bunch today. But his was the first piece that I made, that first cut. And I remember thinking, like, there was definitely a little bit of nervousness. There was a little bit of, wonder, but I really just believed in myself so much. And I said, this is going to, change my life and hopefully the world. And when I went through it, as I was reading his bio, he used a lot of artwork in his art from other artists. And I felt like he would be appreciative of what I'm doing now, and using his art and starting with that and bringing it to a different level to show this visual storytelling, context. And with his, it was really beautiful because every single page had his artwork, full page. And so with that, you could really see kind of the breadth of his work in one single snapshot, which is something that I think real art lovers have appreciated about this, is that if you want to see all these art pieces, you have to go to, museums around the world, or many different galleries, or, even, a Google image search can't even get all these images together. But with my work, you can see in many instances a full snapshot of their history, of all their pieces side by side, very often chronologically detailing how they started and where they ended up. And to me, I just feel like it's very beautiful to see all that in one spot.
Very exciting, and very cool that you were able to track down stuff like that. And I'm looking through the different pieces here and kind of how you've animated them. How did you come up with the process here? Because they all look kind of like animated in different ways, and it's really, really fascinating the way that it kind of captures the eye. I'd love to hear more about that.
Thank you. Yeah, so I wanted all the pieces to be part of the same collection. So as different artists, they all had different ideas of interpreting the world and creating, but I wanted there to be some link. And for me, the link was kind of this neon color palette that wasn't necessarily available to them when they were creating. And so that's where I basically take the background of the image as their artwork and animate it with different neon color systems. And then within each of the pieces, it's all individually done, where I'm trying to figure out, like I said, what would the artist be creating if they were alive today? So for Ndali's piece, for example, the clock drips down in real time. In the Frida Kahlo piece, her eyes are blinking. The Keith Haring, the heart is animated, it's pumping. The street where the people are next to each other is moving kind of ahead into the future. And so it's not like a one, size fits all method. It was like, I have this vision, I have an idea, like a brand, vision where I'm going to unite them all, but I want them all to be unique in the way that I animate them. So the only thing that are really kind of consistent throughout is that they all have the neon color palette, and they all have their animated signature as they would be, basically showing if they were alive, seeing how, it's actually moving. And I felt that that was really important because, as I said, I feel that, NFTs can be looked at as digital signatures to show history and ownership. And so I believe that animating that for this series really made a lot of sense.
And it's called the Signature Series as well, so it makes sense that you would animate it that way. And I like that you brought your own signature in there as well, so you kind of bring the two together, and so you add your new digital signature while tracing their historical signature. It's very cool. I'm wondering why MakersPlace? Obviously, there are a lot of other NFT marketplaces available, so I'm just wondering what made you decide to go with them.
Yeah, I definitely looked into a few. I think there's two main reasons I went to MakersPlace. One was my art consultant slash close friend of forever. We'd worked together for 10 years. Had started working there and was really trying to bring me on. And I really loved their kind of human connection of actually talking to people. Actually, they're very, very accountable, really, really impressive team. And so they would say they're going to get stuff done, and they actually got it done. And I just really appreciate that. But then the ultimate reason why I was able to go with them, they do have a higher percentage. They have a 15%, commission for their pieces, which is higher than some of the other marketplaces. It's one of the higher ones. But they were able to, in addition, basically offer me showing space at Scope, where I met you. And so to be at one of the largest art shows in the world, showcasing this new art category, bringing it to the masses, in real life, I thought was really important because there's a certain beauty and appreciation you can get from seeing these NFTs online and seeing a photo of the book in its frame, but seeing them in person, being able to walk around the piece and understand that these are three-dimensional. They pop out at you. You see all the layers of the book or the magazine. That's why they're in the plexiglass box frame, so that you can actually walk around. I wanted it to be pop art meets sculpture meets physical art meets it's a combination of these ideas. And so to me, being able to showcase it in a physical space of that caliber really, turned me on to MakersPlace, and so far it's been a great relationship.
Awesome. So MakersPlace made it possible for me to meet you then.
This is true.
Very cool. Yeah, it was a really good display. They had a few other very impressive projects as well, and a couple that I knew the artist of through our community on Clubhouse. So that was really cool to see as well. Like people that I've spoken to in the space that were also had their artwork up there. So I'm wondering, do you have kind of a favorite blockchain as far as that whole conversation goes? Obviously, you're on Ethereum, but do you have any preferences or any thoughts towards other options, or are you pretty lined up with Ethereum?
I'm still very new in that essence. I've only, used the Ethereum blockchain. I like that they are making strides to be better for the environment and more user friendly, with lower gas fees, at least recently. So it's difficult for me to really fully comment on that. I'm very much open to it, but the first few pieces I sold were on OpenSea, like I said, to my private collectors that I kind of did a single one-to-one sale. And then with this one really just being taken into the MakersPlace world and realizing they only take the Ethereum payments, or you can also pay with a credit card. So for me, I've only had that small experience, but looking forward and open to showcasing on different platforms.
Very cool, very cool. And looking at, this is a topic that comes up outside in more of the PFP and large collection conversation, but I think it's also interesting when looking at some of the more limited edition one-of-one art pieces. Is there a long-term kind of roadmap or utility that you see in the future, maybe in the metaverse, or maybe it's exclusive events where you're highlighting some of your work and your collectors can get in for free or something like that? But have you thought of any kind of future use for the NFTs?
Yeah, so I definitely have a larger plan that I'm maybe not necessarily ready to reveal just yet, in terms of the ability to take this beyond art books, I'll say. But I definitely, the beautiful thing about selling these pieces, not only with MakersPlace, but really meeting all the buyers in person at the shows that we've been at, is that it's developing relationships, it's getting to understand who they are. And so in that sense, I don't have a Discord channel. I'm very new to the I basically was an Instagram artist and kind of did my thing and was like, I only want to be on Instagram. And unfortunately, I have to have a Facebook, because to sell products on Instagram, you have to put them on Facebook. And that's kind of how they get you to keep that. And, I'm very new to Twitter. I just joined Twitter like maybe 3 weeks ago, a few people I met in person who are pretty well known in the art world were like, "God, if you're going to be selling NFTs, you got to be on Twitter and you got to be on Discord and Twitch and all these, um, Signal, and these are all very, very new to me, and so I'm trying to learn. But
Mm.
I think as a more traditional old school artist, I'm trying to kind of break through and be more open minded to all these other platforms, because I think there was a while where I was like, and there are some artists who believe this, where it's like, I'm going to create the art, I'm going to make awesome stuff, and then I'm going to hire a team, or I'm going to collaborate or work with other people who can get it out there. And there's definitely a sense of that for me with this series. I could have I was asked and approached by some people about partnering with design and different animation techniques, but for me, I wanted to touch every single component from the beginning to the end of the series. So from the sourcing to the reading through to the creating to the NFT creation, I did every single thing. And for me, that was really, really important to have my stamp of approval, my signature on it. And I know a lot of people who've done really well, who've hired out stuff and have come up with the idea, and they hire teams. And I think there's different ways to do it. But for me as a creative, I feel that the true joy comes from actually putting in the time, putting in the effort, getting your hands dirty, learning programs that you don't understand fully, to really explore that creative method. And to me, that was the only way I wanted the Signature Series to be launched.
That's amazing. That's exactly what we talk about often when it comes to Web3, and definitely there's a space for, contracting out and hiring someone to do the art on a project that you've conceptualized. But it does get a little bit murky. It gets a little bit icky sometimes, depending on what you're actually paying the artist to help you get that done, right?
I think as however you support artists, I've always looked at supporters and fans and clients in the highest regard, because it's not only saying to me, just as a moment of appreciation here, it's not only saying I love what you're doing and I want to pay for it and support you, but it's saying I want you to keep doing what you're doing. I want you to have that creative freedom, because for me, I've been defining success, at least creatively, as ability to create what I want when I want from wherever I want, and slowly getting there in different ways. And things have been going in a very upward trajectory, very thankfully. But people who support you are saying, I want you to continue doing that. I think that when you really look at it like that, it's really special for people who take the time to read, to learn, to support, to pay, to retweet. I mean, it's really magnificent.
Amen. Amen. That's what it's all about. And it's like those little things that make a big difference. And again, as a collector, it's the reward in knowing exactly that you're helping them push forward, you're encouraging them by purchasing their art, or even if it is just a retweet or saying something, or you know, promoting someone in a very genuine way, basically, right? That's what it comes back to, is kind of helping artists find success in this space, and it's really exciting. So, do you have this art actually showing in the metaverse, or have you looked into doing like a metaversal gallery for the Signature Series?
Actually, yes. So it's not in the metaverse just yet, but I have talked to a gallery owner in the metaverse about doing something. We are working on that. He's also working on a really big in-person project in Europe the next few months. I'm trying to coordinate both physical and digital. But right now, outside of the MakersPlace setup, the pieces are on display at the Lighthouse NFT Gallery in Old San Juan in Puerto Rico. So that's, we did the first 6 pieces that we launched and kind of teased at Scope when we met for Art Basel Miami beginning of December. And then from there, the following week, we launched the entire 22-piece series in Puerto Rico, excuse me, with a big launch event, and got a lot of the crypto community out there activated and excited about it. And it is currently at the gallery right now, where it was supposed to only be for a week, but it did so well, and we're keeping up for a little bit longer. We don't know exactly for how long just yet, but right now the gallery is open by appointment only. So if anyone is interested, they can reach out to me or directly to the gallery and check it out.
Awesome. And what does the process look like as far as the phygital angle, right? I think I saw the actual physical pieces, which was really cool to be able to see in person. But looking at they're a little bit fragile, shall we say? And how does it look like? So they purchase the NFT, then you have to kind of do the kind of Web2 thing with getting their traditional address and getting all that information, right? And then sending it out. Is it a lot to take on? And yeah, how do you find the whole process?
I mean, I've enjoyed it. I mean, it definitely, I see the benefits and challenges to both sides. I mean, when I was starting out, I was like, oh, well, physical art, you have to think about, the value and the shipping and the handling and the preciousness of it. And then with digital art, it's like, oh, well, can somebody, hack this, or if the power goes out? Like, there's frustrations and differences on both sides that make it, beautiful and also dangerous. So for me, bringing them both together is kind of the best of both worlds. I do take people's addresses. I have hand delivered the pieces directly to clients. And I think it's part of this relationship building. Like I said, they get to pick a school anywhere in the world. And, very often it's in their hometown. It's where they are from. And I get to go there and paint on their behalf. It could be their school that they went to, or their children's school, wherever. So I kind of like it. I mean, I really appreciate what digital collectibles have done to, in the NFT space. And I feel like with this, even though it is a smaller collection of 22 pieces, you get the physical collectible that is already steeped in value, that already has a kind of a beautiful tie to history. You get the digital collectible and you get the social impact. So I don't know where I'm going to be going in terms of next series, but I really like the idea of being able to combine these worlds, because I think there's a beauty in terms of bringing people like old school collectors into the Web3 community. And how can you do that? Well, people know Picasso, people know Basquiat, people know Keith Haring. And so a lot of those buyers are older school, more conservative, more traditional, but they recognize those names. If they could buy those pieces and then they get an NFT and they're brought into this, Web3 community, I look at it as this like bridging the gap between these sides that could be really beneficial for all of us.
Most definitely. That was exactly how I kind of viewed it when I heard it, and you were kind of telling me the whole spiel in person there at Scope on that beautiful Miami beach. I have to say, if I had to pick one, I would definitely be picking this Frida Kahlo. I really, really love this piece. The animation is just so on point. Obviously, it's already sold for 28 Ethereum, or 28.9, so almost 29 Ethereum. So I'm guessing when it goes on the resale market, it's probably going to be at least 50 Ethereum if it ever comes back up for sale. But it's very beautiful, and I just really love the animation, especially like inside. I don't know if that's supposed to be like her heart, and then the words along the side. Are those all her writing, like where it says revolution?
Words around the side are words that I picked up from her bio that I actually wrote around to kind of give it a little bit of context. That was the first piece that sold on day one, and that is actually an original Time magazine from 1938. It was the first ever press piece that she received. It was actually quite controversial because it referenced her as the wife of famed muralist Diego Rivera, and not as, famous artist Frida Kahlo. So it was a little bit, disrespectful in that sense.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Because yeah, but that one was special because I really that was one of the ones that's more so collage. With the magazine pieces, there's a few magazine pieces in the collection. Magazine pages are a little bit thinner, a little bit more difficult to pop up and make kind of move the way that I like doing the actual book pieces. But for that piece, I combined two of her most famous paintings. So there's a self-portrait with a hummingbird, a thorn necklace, and also then the broken column. She was actually in a major car accident, with a bus accident. And for her whole life, she described having pain and, going through, unprofessional medical procedures. And she basically turned this pain into transformational energy of creativity. And she very much alluded to how that pushed her forward and, inspired her. And so I wanted to kind of combine those two artworks of hers into her own piece. And then specifically for the NFT that you imagine, it's like giving her, eternal life with the blinking eyes and the moving chest. And it's like where her lungs meet her chest. And it's, the article makes up part of her shirt there. And so, yeah, I feel like with that one, and with also with the Ansel Adams piece, I found them to be really interesting biographically. And so, for those two pieces, I took words from the bios that were really resonating with me, what was important, and then I hid them very often. In the Ansel Adams piece, I basically painted a border around that to almost make it look like a photograph where all of his pieces are inside and the photo border is around it, because he basically is one of the most famous American photographers of the 1900s, really brought the American Southwest and West to the world. And so, like I said, each bio really kind of inspired me to figure out how I was going to create it with these interesting little tweaks and storylines, not only for the physical piece, but also for the NFT.
Wow, that's really, really fascinating. Yeah, now that you mentioned the whole story behind the Frida and the Time magazine, like now I really know why I like it. It's just very impactful, just really significant history there for sure, for sure. I'm looking at the Andy Warhol here too. It's just next level stuff, man. It's like really, really cool.
because that was actually, so very few of them were books that are predominantly words, like the way that we traditionally understand a book. Most of them were artist books, where it's a majority of them were the paintings or illustrations of the artist, and then a few words. With Andy Warhol, that was actually a popism book. So I read through the book and found out my favorite quotes that were written in it, and then used that to kind of siphon over the different images and visuals from like the few pages of in the inside of the book, where they have like the photo section is only like 10 or 20 pages. So I really tried to isolate that. And I mean, it had the heart in it. It had its, fading signature, which is so beautiful and, just signal that time. But specifically with that NFT, I really wanted to kind of visualize what it would be like to be at the factory, right? So I tried to make it look like the inner workings of a clock, where, the pieces are moving and shaping together and really kind of twisting and turning the way that he was creating his artwork. And then with the background, this idea of, with printmaking, which he was obviously so famous for, sometimes you see the front side, sometimes you see the back side. And so with the backdrop of that NFT, I really wanted to make it so that it was a mirror image of itself, to get both the front and the back, the full kind of spectrum of his printmaking, in one concise image.
So amazing. I love the way that you chose to do the black marker too. So you kind of like finished his signature and made it a little clearer on there. It's really, really cool.
Exactly.
Next level. All right. So I do want to just ask, more broadly, what is kind of your long-term goal for this project? Do you foresee Signature Series Volume 3, 4, 5? Like, is this going to be your niche, your thing, your Illuminism, going forward?
I mean, I think that being a pioneer in any field is quite remarkable, and I've been flirting with that in terms of being the pioneer of this new art category of Illuminism. And so I really want to focus on that in different ways, and not necessarily be tied down to it, but still being able to express my creativity around this new idea. So short term, it's to continue hustling and pushing forward and trying to sell the rest of these pieces. As you mentioned, they're not your typical more affordable pieces. They are very, very rare and very, very high end pieces. And so it takes a certain kind of forward thinking buyer and a certain kind of person who believes in innovation and sees the value not only for the personal piece but for the communal piece. So as a traditionally non Web3 or just really getting into that full community now, trying to find the buyers who appreciate and understand it. So really selling out this collection is the first goal, and then moving ahead, trying to one idea that I really, really like, and I'm talking about potentially doing a TV series around, would be, the idea of collaborating with living artists or living, authors, and what that would look like. Because the one other thing that really binds these 22 artists for the Signature Series, that they were all, unfortunately passed away. And so that kind of spoke to the rarity of the signature and the rarity of the book. And that was why I wanted to kind of start there. But I've got many ideas and I want to keep pushing forward. It's kind of this battle where I'm like, I want to push ahead and work on these new projects and do that, but I'm still, figuring out the marketing and the sales and the strategy of getting these pieces out there. So
Right.
It's definitely a balance. And I think that we all have, more than one thing we're working on at any time, but really trying to focus my energy on this while it's out there, because I do believe it's going to be an incredibly huge, if not the biggest art story in the world when it fully breaks through the kind of levels that I'm getting to right now. Because I think it's got excitement. I think it's controversial. I think it's new, and I think people like all those things together in a story.
Word. Exciting, controversial, and new, most definitely. It's really exciting. And I'm looking at the Pablo Picasso piece here for 39.6 Ethereum. It's like nobody's done this before. And taking something that Pablo himself actually touched and wrote on, and then kind of cutting it up in not just any way, but in a very cool, artistic way, and then animating it, putting it on the blockchain, and selling both together with the NFT. It's just fascinating.
The cool thing about that one is that book actually details toward the later part of his career when he was really focusing on ceramics. And so the left side of the NFT has him actually drawing his faces, engraving his faces on a plate. And then you see his doodles and his designs that he did on the top left corner. But then on the right side, this book had all different photos of all the plates or many of the plates that he made. And many of them had, all these different versions of faces and all the cubist ideas. And so I was able to, in studying all these faces and all these plates, kind of cut around them in a way where I took a few different eyes and a few different noses and a few different mouths and a few different chins and necks, and really kind of tried to blend them all into a new cubist approach of a cubist design. So it's like, what would a cubist be doing with his own work if he were alive today? Like me trying to get into Picasso's head. And that was an absolute, that was really just super exciting to work on. Like I said, I've seen him as like, the top artist of the world, of history, and to be able to sit where he was sitting and to work on something that he had touched, and that was just definitely a career highlight.
That is definitely, I can imagine. Everybody, Picasso's up there. I don't know anybody living on Earth who hasn't at least heard the name Pablo Picasso. And I'm no art aficionado myself, but I definitely would be feeling the same way if I had some piece of Pablo Picasso's history. When you talk about sitting where they sat, you just mean like in front of that book, or you mean you actually like went to the physical locations where they were at?
Well, I am physically sitting in front of a book that they had their hand, signing that book right there, and I had my hand there, reading through and cutting up and creating this new artwork. So it's literally trying this idea of kind of transference, or just sharing this energy, this like I keep saying, this cross-generational collaboration, but trying to, as much as I could, be in their shoes and understand what it took for them to break through to become the icons that we know and appreciate today.
That's so amazing, man. Yeah, I think to your other point too, right? These things take time to sell. One-of-one art in general always takes time to sell. We're used to, well, you're an artist before NFTs, right? So you know how it is. People put art up in galleries or even art up in their own space, willing to sell it, but not expecting to necessarily sell it tomorrow or even next month or even necessarily this year, right? So how do you find the whole timing pressure? Obviously with NFTs, there is a little bit more of that, like if it's not selling, it must be crap kind of unfortunate side of the community that does exist. But in the one-of-one space, I think it's less of an issue. But how do you feel about that pressure to sell kind of thing?
That's a great question, because I feel like I have a lot more clarity on that having had a solo show. So my first solo show in New York City in 2019 was called Unity and Diversity. It's a big mantra of mine, celebrating the fact that we're all the same, we're all different. I believe that's beautiful and really speaks to my one love messaging. But with that collection, I rented out the space, and I decided, I'd rather put in the effort and haul ass and work, at my tail off to sell and to get people there. And in this space that I rented out, so I pay, upfront, I pay out the money and I rent the space, but I get to keep all the money that I from the pieces I sell.
Mhm.
And I had over 100 pieces in the first show, different sizes, some smaller, medium size, like the ones behind me, and some larger ones as well. But I sold maybe 10 or 12 pieces, and I hadn't sold 10 or 12 pieces in a while before that. But for me, it was kind of a somewhat of, I think in art you have to balance out and really understand perspective. But for me, I was like, man, that's only like 10% of the whole thing. I was kind of frustrated. I was like, wow, I'm over breaking even, and it was great, but I really wish it would have happened more. It was only for a week or a few days. But then the tail of the show, really getting it in front of the right people, and within the next few months, I sold nearly half the collection. And to this day, I mean, there's very few pieces of it, if any, really remaining. But it really takes a longer haul, like you said, with the custom one-of-one individual pieces. The fact that there is a certain, historical value and appreciation to them. I think I'm tied into this long haul, and just feeling stronger and more resilient than ever, because the people who've seen them and really appreciate them and are not only voting with their retweets and their outreach, but who are voting with their wallets, have really shown me that this is something special. And I feel that, I feel like these are, personally, I mean, it's maybe not, maybe many people feel this about their own work, but I feel this is a steal at these prices for what they are and for what I'm doing and what I'm offering. And I just feel that the people who are getting in at this price and knowing that like they have something rare and unique that's never been done before, and they have the communal outreach component, I just think like that is what I need to keep reminding myself on, because it could be easy to get down and say, oh, well, only a few of them have sold, and it hasn't sold out, and minutes or hours, like big product. Like I didn't have a huge marketing budget. I didn't have a huge Discord or communal team. I was based in Instagram, and all the few pieces have done really well there. It's not really as much of a Web3 community, so that's more about like my murals and my physical paintings. But I think that the Web3 community really forces us to become better at who we are, because we have to be stronger to be pushing and focusing on something that we not only we believe in, but we know is the future. And it's not as easy to really get everyone on board. And so I feel excited by it. I'm constantly, going through up and downs, but I just kind of pick myself up and say that this is going to be amazing.
Awesome. Yeah. Ups and downs, I think, do come in the Web3 space, unfortunately, but I can hear it in your conviction. And obviously, to your point, it is timeless. It is incredibly rare. And most importantly, now it is immutable. So it's going to be there forever, and I do agree, even though it's outside of my price range, unfortunately, but I could see how it is definitely a steal from your perspective, and from the perspective of collectors who collect Pablo Picasso, who collect Basquiat and Hirschfeld and all these amazing, well-known, renowned artists who you actually, like you said, touched a piece of the work that they've actually touched as well, and you emphasize their signature, and you really, again, brought it into the 21st century in a really kind of a cool and exciting way. So speaking to that conviction, as a final kind of wrap-up question, we always like to ask our guests is like, what do you say to the doubters, to those who don't see the value in the blockchain? You were on Instagram, you're saying, and you're slowly getting into Twitter, with this does have a bit more of a Web3 native kind of audience, but we're doing the opposite. We're trying to branch into Instagram a bit more because we realize the numbers are there, the people are there, and we're trying to grow a podcast. We got to get to where the people are at, even if they're mostly not Web3 native, but maybe they want to know about Web3, right? So what do you say to those people who are just kind of on the outskirts, a little bit doubtful, maybe listening to the FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and just don't want to get involved with NFTs or don't see the art side of it? And you just talked about bringing the generational people over, right? So there are people who don't know anything about NFTs, but know these artists that you've collected, and want to have a piece of their history, right? So maybe those would be an example. What do you say to them when they're like, why'd you do blockchain? Why'd you put this on the blockchain?
I feel like crypto and NFTs have a, it can have a dirty connotation with a lot of the bad press and a lot of the rug pulls and a lot of the bullshit that's going on. And I think I speak for a lot of people, and I hope that a lot of what's going on now will clear out the field of all the, people who are not serious, or the people who are just trying to make a quick buck and not really be serious about this. I am in this for the long haul. I'm an artist at heart. I have many different crazy creative ideas that I want to bring to life, and I feel this is one of them. And I feel like this is my chance to help bring people from the traditional collecting world into the digital world. And so I feel like I'm doing my part. I feel like we all do our part in different ways, but I think that showing something that has an already intrinsic value, being able to add to that, is important. I think that communication is key in explaining different projects. I think a lot of people I talked to at the beginning didn't understand how a JPEG or MOV file or a GIF, whatever, could be going for the pricing. And I think it's when you understand that it's not, I would argue, when it's not just that, it's being part of the community, it's access, it's understanding that there's certain other perks that come with it. I think that's easier for the traditional collector to understand and to bring them into the conversation. Once they get in the conversation, they can realize, oh, there is absolute value in this digital design, this NFT that can be used in XYZ number of ways and be appreciated, in a gallery, in the metaverse, wherever. But I think breaking it down to be as easy and simple as possible, where it's as forthright, as like transparent as possible. This is exactly what's happening. This is why we're doing this. I think is really great, and hopefully, people see that this is ahead of its time, and people really start to trust it as much as I do, and I know you do.
Definitely. We're ahead of the time, but I think you're just in time for this. I think if you hadn't done it, someone else would have done something similar, And the way that you're framing it as this Illuminism kind of new corner, new niche, it's really, really next level, man. And I really wish you the best. I hope that those collectors for Basquiat and Pablo Picasso and other big names will drop by the Signature Series and follow you on Twitter and retweet your art and really push it out there for other collectors. And it's going to be exciting to see how it goes, And to your point, I think it makes sense to focus on this collection, try to sell it out, or at least get to a point where you're really comfortable before you even consider moving on to something new, Really, really cool. And I think to your point, yeah, leaning on the technology, leaning on your own conviction and your reason for being here and staying here is everything. And other people will follow, and those who see the value in what you're doing will definitely jump on board. Do you have any final thoughts or questions before we wrap up here?
I'm just really grateful to be, accepted in the community and be, talking to you here, and I really just feeling a lot of gratitude in my heart. Really excited about where things are going, and just needing to remember that during the dark, crazy, difficult times is important. Just really glad you got to see it in person. If anyone wants to see it in person, please reach out to me. You can also see the blog on MakersPlace, which has a little bit more information about each piece. There's a click-through link on the main page there, which tells a little bit about each piece. It shows the actual physical book design photograph, so you can kind of see a little bit more about it. But I like one thing I want to say, which I didn't mention yet, is that after what happened with two people from Christie's calling it a new art category and some of the excitement around that, we have been filming a art documentary that's basically been following me around for the last year. The working title right now is called Signed. The idea of going from the conception of the idea to reading through the books to creating to marketing to selling and showcasing it. So watch out for that. But I do believe when that comes out, people are going to be regretting that they're not buying these now. So a little bit of a fun teaser there, and I'll definitely keep you posted on how it goes.
Wow, that's really, really cool. So you got content from kind of like the whole way along when you were building the project and putting it all together?
I do, yeah.
Awesome. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that documentary, and we'll have your links for the MakersPlace collection, as well as your own Twitter and that in the bio or in the description, I should say, for the podcast. So we'll be looking forward to sharing that with the community and hopefully get some more eyes on your amazing collection here. And thank you again so much, Marco. A really interesting, amazing phygital collection. I have to say, probably the most impressive phygital collection that I've seen myself, and most historically relevant as well, to your point. So really excited to see what's going on there. And until next week, we'll be live again at 12 p.m. Eastern, and we'll catch you in the metaverse. And thanks again, Marco.
Awesome. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Peace out.